Call the meeting of the Willmar City Council for Monday, January 4th to order. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Christensen.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Amon.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Meske. Plowman.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Fagerly.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda? We'll have to remove item number 11 because we do not have a full council. So if you could make note of that, Kevin, please. Anything else from the council? Councilmember Amon.
Update on the Y project?
I'm sorry?
Did we request an update on the Y project?
Mr. Mayor, our knowledgeable person is not here.
Bruce isn't here. Did you talk to him beforehand or
I thought
just
he
bring
would
it up
be here
tonight? Did you talk to him beforehand?
Did I talk to him what?
Beforehand? Before the meeting?
No, I was hoping he was going to be here tonight.
Okay.
Deal with that later.
Does somebody else want to make a comment about it, or?
Not with his level of expertise.
I mean, I can talk about it, but I don't know what I would say other than what's already been reported. Would you like for me to give a report at the end, or want to wait? Okay,
Mr. Mayor and Council, Bruce is sick this afternoon, so that's why he's not here.
correct. Anything else for the additions? Okay, seeing and hearing none, that one, removing number 11, entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Motion been made, is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent items. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
Just seeking clarification for the item that's in the minutes that was tabled, when we will be dealing with that, or it's not on the agenda?
The item on the Bolton and Mink payment of the $40,000 will go to finance next week, and there will be a report that is submitted there, and then it'll come back to full council at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The discussion? All those in favor? I'm sorry, Councilmember Amon.
Just a question on, we're going to be dealing with these appointments and recommending those, correct? There was one on the planning, or the municipal utilities that I was just curious. I don't know what the criteria is for being on some of the boards. I know that the mayor pre-screens the people and brings brings recommendations to the council and we approve them. I guess I was questioning the application when the reasons for the application was asked by my supervisor and to replace the resigning commissioner and to represent a major corporation in town is the reasons why you want to serve on the boards and commissions. And I'm just curious, that struck me as kind of odd, and I was just wondering if anybody could clarify that for who knows this individual. But I would think that an answer to that would be to represent the constituents in the city of Willmar, not necessarily one large corporation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I had Larry follow up on that, our city administrator, so go ahead, Mr. Cruz.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Amon, I did call Nathan and have a conversation with him, and he did that application very quickly, and that was kind of the first thing that came out. But really, he's interested in representing the broader city. He's very interested in getting involved more in city government. He brings a perspective from dealing with environmental regulations, pollution control agency, and a host of other state and federal agencies. He deals with HR issues, and he just seems like a very knowledgeable, broad-based person that will be a good board member. And I have to say, in our conversation, his application that he submitted didn't really reflect what his intentions were, and I apologize. I wanted to get something in writing prior to the meeting to have him clarify that, but I did have a phone conversation, and I think he'd be an excellent board member.
I have no doubt in your judgment, not knowing the individual, and I'm not attacking this individual or his character. or anything. I just am a little curious why a supervisor would ask a person to serve on a board. Means that if you don't, you know how things can be misread in a statement like that, why or who is asking that individual to serve. It makes me a little cautious and curious, and if you feel comfortable with that answer, I guess that would be great if you could get a summary to us. I'd appreciate it.
I would gladly do that, and I was very impressed with the conversation that we had,
sure.
that he would represent the broader community.
I'm sure you will.
Additional discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
We are just receiving that for information tonight, so it would be very appropriate for us to have that update before we vote on it at the next meeting.
Correct. Additional discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion does carry. Next is the hearing for the nuisance administrative fee ordinance. Mr. Halliday.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, a few months ago, the city learned of a new fee from the county on all the parcels that we send over to the county for certification and collection from the various liens that we have from our various subsections of our codes that require us to abate various things throughout the city. We abate some concerns with weeds and grass mowing, snow removal, garbage, and other perhaps zoning violations. We looked at amending the dollar amount for that administrative fee, knowing the workload that there is, and the conclusion was that it would best suit the city if we would amend the various sections of our municipal code that dealt with these abatements, using language in there for the fee, and then annually review that fee and set a new fee with the resolution that's adopted at the first meeting of the year for the various fees. At this point, we have a hearing. We'll take testimony on the various sections that the city attorney has drafted, and each one had its own fee schedule that is being removed. And generally, the concept is to put language in there that says, together with the administrative fee in an amount not to exceed the actual administrative cost incurred by the city, or in the last case, the Municipal Utilities Commission for their utility liens. And subsequent to that, it is staff's recommendation that we adopt, number, and publish this ordinance, and the price of those administrative fees we would then deal in the annual resolution, which is on this agenda later on.
Okay, so the public hearing is open. Anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this issue? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close it and bring it to the council table. Council, what do you wish to do?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the nuisance administrative fee ordinance as presented. Discussion. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask the city attorney, I mean, the way I read this, it does make the property owner personally liable for the cost of each abatement. We also have the remedy in the ordinance to assess that cost against the property. Correct?
That is correct.
I mean, it says that. And then the other thing I would indicate, since we are making them personally liable, if, for example, the property was forfeited for taxes and the assessment not paid at some point in time, that could happen, we could still sue that person personally, could we? Assuming that they had deep enough pockets to pay any judgment.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Councilmember Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
The ordinance passes. Next is the consideration of delegation of responsible authority for data practices as the city administrator. Mr. Cruz.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the city is required to have a person in charge of data practices, and I think most of you are familiar with this from past discussions. There's a lot of confidential data, and the city needs one go-to person that is the ultimate responsible person for release of that data. It is suggested in this that I be that person, and I would normally consult with our city attorney if there's any questions on any technicalities that might arise. And so with that, I would ask that the council appoint me as the designated authority.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to delegate our responsible authority for data practices as the city administrator. Discussion. All those in favor signify, roll call?
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes. Next is consideration of newly established fees. Mr. Halliday.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you have before you a resolution listing the various costs and fee structure for all sorts of things that the city is involved in, from alcohol, public works items, community ed and recreation, fire department, and the like. I would like to point out a few things for discussion. We took the liberty of putting a $75 fee in for the administrative fees on page 1. There are the various sections that you just approved in the ordinance, and that could be for conversation. We have on the last page the other main changes, some from the fire department. They could be explained from the fire chief. And then in the police department, the annual towing contract bids out the tow per vehicle, and that was less than the prior year. And then the dollar amount is reflected here by going from $115 down to $100 even. With that, Mr. Mayor, after the conversations of some of those proposed corrections by staff, it is staff's recommendation that we adopt that ordinance, or adopt that resolution.
Council?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt a resolution considering the newly established fees. Discussion. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Halliday, wasn't the $75 number, didn't that come out of the Finance Committee several months ago? That was a recommendation that came from us, I believe.
I'm not sure if there was action on it. It was the leading dollar figure that was discussed. I can't remember if it'll come. There were some conversations here that could be higher, but
I know we talked about it, and I think it was Councilmember Fagerly that made the suggestion. Now, maybe it wasn't in terms of a motion, but I know that number came from the Finance Committee.
And my recollection is that the number of $75 came, and then at this table, it was talked about of increasing it to $95, but what I see in the document is $75. So, and I figured there was conversation that led us back to the $75, so that's why we were there. Councilmember Amon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Larry, Mr. Halliday, could you explain the police department fees, the $60 per hour for off-duty police officers? I believe our current contract, is that the rate covering all of our expenses per hour? Because I'm trying to remember what LELS's contract totally is based on, is this sergeants based on their different rates of pay, or is this just community service officers?
well, I would respectfully ask if you ask the police chief. However, we believe it is for the various things that are after hour, could be like school dances and so forth. And the last I understood that they would put that dollar value there that includes their hourly rate and then the fringe benefits that would be calculated out of finance department, and I assume rounded to the high side. But greater detail could be given by the
Chief Belt, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that is correct, and that's a number that was come up from my predecessor, and does reflect regardless of rank, and includes some basic equipment, including a squad car, gasoline to drive and to and from the special detail.
So the intent, excuse me, the intent of this is not to cover our total cost, is to cover most of the cost, correct?
From my understanding in the numbers that we worked, it does cover the total cost and a slight bit additional. So the officer doesn't earn that $60 an hour. They get their regular hourly rate at time and a half, and then the city is reimbursed at that $60 per hour rate.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Just clarification, your statement that you made about the 75 versus 95, did you get an answer to that? Or did I not understand that correctly?
No, I think that what I said is that I assumed that seeing the 75 was in the ordinance, or what we were receiving today, is that was the consensus, that's what we're going to go to. I mean, I think if the council wanted to change that number, it certainly could tonight. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for our fire chief. The bottle filling fees, I see looks like they're all new because they're underlined. Do we fill for the general public? Is that what that's for? Or?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Christensen, we typically don't fill for the general public. I think that's kind of why we have the fees, kind of to deter that a little bit. Basically, the only people that come in to fill bottles are Ridgewater College, Genio, the sheriff's office, and then probably the rescue squad.
Does that fall under a liability insurance too in case something goes wrong?
That, I guess I couldn't answer that, I don't know.
Mr. Halliday.
Well, that's a very good question. I guess you're assuming that one we'll have to ask. They give us 4 bottles, we fill them, and nothing gets filled in them, and they use them in a scenario. That's a question worth posing to the league.
I suggest we do.
Historically, the answer was that the air is tested quarterly. A copy of that report is given to each agency, and I think that's still done, is that right, Chief Hansen? So a copy of that report is given to each agency who fills their bottles out of that system, showing compliance. At that time, it's saying that the air that you received met this specification, and you need to make us aware if there was a problem with that. And that's how it was handled in the past.
Mr. Mayor, one final question if I could, please.
Councilmember Rahman?
Mr. President, is he here?
Yep, he's back there.
Okay, hi. On the aquatic center, have these rates changed from last year? That you're recommending for the aquatic center, the seasonal pass, the family passes?
Mayor Calvin, members of the council, Councilman Amon, these rates have not changed for this coming year, and actually this is the 3rd straight year that those rates will stay the same.
The reason why I'm asking for that question is have we had or have you reevaluated the operational costs of that facility based on the amount of income we're getting in off these individuals that buy passes? And I'm just wondering how that's compared. If we either have to be proactive and lower the rates to get more activity and more people out there, or if we need to raise to cover our overhead on that facility. I'm just wondering if the Community Ed and Rec Board has discussed this at any length, or if you've made any recommendations, or if this is the recommendation of the board.
Mr. Bisendine?
Mayor Calvin, members of the council, Councilman Amon, we do analyze budgets annually. 3 years ago, when we changed the rates actually did go down. We were seeing the attendance was sliding, and our goal was to try to get more attendance at that facility, hoping then that concession sales and other things would go up, and that's indeed what took place a couple of years ago when we did lower the fees, that more people attended, thus bringing up total revenue both for the admissions and for sales of concessions at that facility. As far as covering operational costs, it does not cover operational costs, but given where we were a few years ago in the percentage being covered by admissions and concession sales versus where we are today, at least from a staff perspective, we feel comfortable that we're doing our best to try to create the revenues to offset as much of the expense of that facility as possible.
Mr. President, do you have an approximate, for clarification, is what percentage is being covered by operational costs with the fees? 40%, 30%, 60%? Is there any percentage put to that amount?
Would that be a difficult answer because you really didn't know the question was coming?
Mayor Calvin, typically I have my budget reports in front of me tonight, at these meetings, but I did not bring them tonight. I would be winging a guess, but the one thing that is in the budget that is it's operational because it needs to be in there, but we pay a half a Public Works employee, so it kind of skews what takes place on a daily average because of a half a custodian or half of a Public Works employee being charged to that facility. But I do believe that the last time, not the last time, but off the top of my head, I'm going to say it's somewhere in that 45% range. But I will get you those numbers to Mr. Cruz and out to the council as he sees fit.
Thank you. That would be, I think, beneficial to the entire council, and I think we could also maybe at the same time review some of the other services we provide to the public, so we have a pretty good idea of just what we have to do. We want to provide that service through general taxation, but if fees are not keeping up, we have to make some adjustments, and I know that I've talked to people who are very pleased with the facility. It's very well kept, and we want to increase membership there to make that more sustainable and make us pay the operational costs, but sometimes we have to look at it in a different approach, and that may be something one of the committees could work on if we had the data from all those different types of events through Community Ed and Rec and Blue Lion Club and the Civic Center and all that. We should, I'd be curious to see what their operational costs are with the increases and adjustments in wages and compensations through our labor negotiations, how that affects it, and other additional costs, and just to see how we're distributing the funds, you might say, would be, I think would be very, very good information to have if that could be arranged somehow. Thank you.
Additional discussion. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice the towing took a drastic cut. What was the scoop with that? Did we get some new bids, or?
Chief Felt, do you want to answer that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the last tow bid was good for 2 years and expired at the end of 2015. New bids were sought. There were 2 people that submitted bids to the city. The winning bid was to Ed's Service Center, who has had the bid for a number of years, but in doing so, they cut their rate down from $45 per tow to $25 per tow. So we made some readjustments as far as the towing administrative fee and the tax. It's much easier to collect from people that come out to the office if it's at a more even number at $100 instead of the $115, especially since after hours we don't have change available or credit card use and that type of thing. So in the end, it should result in still an increase in revenue and collecting those fees due to the drop in the tow.
So the administrative fee is being covered?
Correct.
I see that went up.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Amon.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes. Next, we have consideration of the Transportation Alternatives Program. Sean, do you have that for us, Mr. Christensen?
Do, Mayor, members of the council. In front of you are 2 resolutions, which I'm asking for authorization of signatures, approval and authorization of signatures. The first is to be the sponsoring agency for TAP funds, which is Transportation Alternative Programs. The second, of course, is to, per state statute, we have to have a resolution that we will maintain the facilities that we build with these funds for the useful life of that improvement. This is for a bike trail The bike trail would be on the south side of Highway 12 from Lakeland Drive to basically basically Casey's. So Home State Bank to Casey's is the plan at this point. These funds would be available, it's saying here 2019, although we understand from the state that there's a possibility of getting those funds a year in advance, and we have to have a 20% match. So I can answer any questions, but this is part of the grant application is to approve these two resolutions.
Council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the city to act as a sponsoring agency with MnDOT. Discussion. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean, do we have to buy any right-of-way, or is that all state land already?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Fagerly, it is currently the concept, of course, it's like I say, construction in 18 or 19. Conceptually, we will be completely in MnDOT right away.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Next is a resolution passes, a resolution to maintain the facilities as constructed. Council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve a resolution to maintain the facilities as constructed. Discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Amon.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes. Next is the announcement of committee meeting dates. Finance.
Mr. Mayor, the Finance Committee will meet Monday, the 11th at 4:45 at City Hall.
Public Works, Public Safety.
Tuesday, January 12th, 4:45, City Hall.
Labor.
13th, Wednesday, 4:45.
That will be a full council meeting.
That will be a full council meeting.
Community Development.
Thursday, the 14th, 4:45, City Hall.
And then just for the public's information, the next council meeting will be on Tuesday, January 19th at 7 p.m. in these chambers. That is because of the federal holiday. Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. We're adjourned.